real? Are you telling me this is really a prolapsed booty hole? Tell me the truth. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Homeboys Got Receipts. I want to talk about the Pyrocynical allegation. All you gotta really know is he's like a British commentary YouTuber. Talks about Logan Paul, TikTokers. Like you see he's got, TikTok is overtaken the Fall Guys, TikTokers, Netflix show, Final Boss Karen. He recently was accused of grooming. It wasn't until about 2 weeks later, which was about, yesterday, just yesterday, he responded to the accusation. And I want to go over that today because I feel like his response makes it easier for me to cover it. So shout out to that. So he responded on his Reddit because he was suspended on Twitter a few years back. So again, this guy was accused of grooming a 15-year-old, right? And the way he titles it is addressing the false allegations. And he says, "Hey gamers." Right, it's a great way to start a grooming allegation, you know. "Hey gamers, how's it going? I would like to take this opportunity to address a false allegation recently made against me on Twitter. As some of you have seen, it has been claimed back in 2016 when I was 19 years old that I groomed an individual who was 15 years old at the time. I want to set the record straight with you all and share the truth that this accusation is 100% false and incredibly irresponsible." So let me give a little context to this actually, because I want to like kind of balance it out, you know, because people might not know what he's talking about exactly. So like, because he didn't link the accusation. The accusation was this. It's by this Twitter user Ivory Erasmus 1312, and it reads, "Trigger warning, grooming. Pyrocynical groomed me, and I have screenshots to prove it." It's an interesting way to start an accusation, but you know, it's like, "I can prove it." Oh, okay, because you know, you're setting the bar kind of high right there, homie, but let's go. "I've been sitting thinking about this shit nonstop, being angry, confused, and sad that I've had to accept this since I was 15. But I never said anything because I felt powerless." What he sent me ranged from drawn, not safe for W work, NSFW. I'm stupid, I can't read. What he sent me ranged from drawn NSFW to fetishy YouTube videos, and he'd asked me to compile shit for him using tags that he liked on certain websites. I'm not sure what that means. Compile stuff for him using tags that he liked on certain websites. Does anybody know what that could be referring to? Am I the only one lost in that? Like, what does that mean? You guys think like adult sites, like furry, hentai? Okay. All right. And then he continues on to say, "At 15, I obviously did it because he's fucking pyrocynical. I was just happy to be talking to him, and I was trying to continue that. I have Discord screenshots going back 4 years proving all of this, and I don't know if I should post them here, but I may. Either way, I'm done sitting here being quiet about it when I know mad people went through the same but are extremely traumatized and scared of talking about it." Okay, so this is interesting because he's saying there are more skeletons in Pyro's closet. It's been 2 weeks. As far as I know, no skeletons have come out, but you never know, I guess. We'll see. Now, he did end up posting some screenshots. Hopefully there's nothing inappropriate in there. I watched Augie's video like a week ago, and he went over it, so it's probably fine, right? So Ivory is Lovebird, and Pyro is the deleted user because he deleted his Discord account. He says, "If I did it, I think I forgot it. I just saw it and retweeted it." Oh, okay. Oh, Ivory went ahead and censored it for us. Thank you. So here's the image that I guess Pyro sent. Not sure what that is or supposed to be. I literally thought it was like a Minecraft sword. There was already rumors that Pyro was a furry, so I guess we finally have confirmation, which I don't know who'd care.
Remember one thing and never, ever, 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 ever forget it. Pyrocynical is a f***ing furry that goes to furry conventions that gets f***ed in the ass by 40-year-old men in giraffe costumes.
I've seen furries at Comic-Con when I've gone, and I don't understand it, but is there something to judge about that? They like to dress up like this. Is that bad? I don't know. Who cares?
But the one thing that I'm never going to forgive him on is that he is a f***ing furry that goes to furry conventions that gets f***ed in the ass by 40-year-old men in giraffe costume.
Well, I guess that answers my question. Keemstar cares. Now, even though I found a clip of Keemstar making fun of Pyro for being a furry and judging him all the way back in 2016, none other than Pyro himself made fun of furries and judged them back in 2016 as well.
How's it going, everyone? Adolf Hitler here. Now, I'm sure at this point, most of you know what a furry is and how they're disgusting degenerates and they should all be wiped off the face of the internet. I mean, furries are just, they're disgusting, right, guys?
Bruh, let's keep the story going. But that's not where it ends, ladies and gentlemen. Ivory says, oh, that was who the artist was. And those stills look really nice, by the way. And Pyrocynical says, thanks, N-word, hard R. And then Pyrocynical sends, I don't know what that is. I don't know what kind of Minecraft character this could be. Also got this if I didn't send it already. So I guess Pyrocynical is sending things that need to be censored to this 15-year-old teenager, right? And that's what's being presented here. And then apparently they were also kind of having some fantasy roleplay stuff going on. Someone is here seen saying your sona, which I believe is short for your fursona, right? So from my understanding, as a non-furry, people like to get fursonas, right? So like they're kind of spirit animals, what kind of furry they would be. Oh, okay, so it's like their spirit. Am I saying this right? Can somebody actually explain what a fursona is? Oh, it's a prolapsed booty hole. This is a prolapsed booty hole? Someone in the chat just told me that this is a prolapsed booty hole. Why would anybody draw this? Is this real? Are you telling me this is really a prolapsed booty hole? Tell me the truth. Okay, does anybody disagree with that? Are you serious right fucking now? I think I need to get a beer. Okay? Why are you sending drawings of prolapsed booty holes to kids, dude? That's fucking weird. By the way, that screenshot was from 3 years ago. He's 23 now. This 19-year-old was sending pictures to a 15-year-old. We see a message up here saying, your sona could just be gassing nonstop as he, has relations with mine. So sona meaning your alter ego. So it's like they're escaping their body and they're like, ah. It's like the one Black Mirror episode where they're playing a video game, but they're like escape their bodies. So they're just, I guess they're imagining it, fantasy role playing as their sonas, right? So they're imagining themselves as these characters. This is the fursona that they're, by the way. So most people would think a furry would look like this. This is like most people's like idea of a fursona, right? Like if someone talked to me about a furry, I would think something like this. However, when these two individuals are thinking about fursonas, they're thinking about something like this. Okay, this is what Pyro sent. He sent that fursona. Pyrocynical proceeded on to say, to be honest, I would pick you up, hug you, while rubbing you against my huge sweaty moobs, short for man boobs, then kiss your cheeks telling you how much I loved you, and then kiss you on the lips, and let out a hard, long belch into your mouth. Yo, what the fuck is going on here? As you guys can see, Ivory blocked out what he said, and he went onto Twitter to say that the reason why he did this is because he was 15 at the time, and he thought that it was a little bit weird, to show himself. So Ivory says some, continues on the roleplay, and that's when Pyro says, eat your sausage up my butt, to be honest. I don't know, fart so long and hard on your lap, you wouldn't be able to breathe. My ass and back would be dripping in sweat. Got the thick of my dragon, by the way. Dude, what am I reading, dude? And then Pyro says, my gut would crush you. You'd hear all the moaning and growling from the animals I've eaten beforehand, squirming around in my massive belly. I believe this is called vor, right? Short for vorophilia or vorophilia, a fetish in which one fantasizes about being eaten alive or eating another creature alive. The most common type of vor is soft vor, being swallowed or swallowing whole with no bloodshed. Okay, so that explains. See, we needed that context, everybody. We needed that because now we understand why this character is so large, because he's eating other creatures. You guys understand? So now I understand. So that makes sense. See, so that adds context to why Pyro would say something like, you would hear all the moaning and growling from all the other animals that he's eaten, because I guess he just swallowed them. He didn't actually chew them. Yeah, a lot of interesting fantasy roleplay. Do people get off to this? A fetish. Yeah, it's a fetish. A fetish, people get off to fetishes. So yeah, I guess they get off to it. Now, I don't know what this is, and I don't think I want to know, but Pyro sent it, and Ivory says, ooh, that little sounds are so nice, to be honest. To be honest, I've been thinking about my anthro haunter getting swallowed and or crushed by a thick character like your fox or something. I wish I could drink a beer to get me through this, but I'm pregnant. At least you didn't swallow the baby that's inside you.
No.
And then Pyro responds, oi, 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 oi. That sounds really nice, to be honest. Ivory says, I know, right? It's so nice. And then Pyro says something like this with our personas, not personas, fursonas. So this looks like a foxy fursona lady, studying a subject that appears to have just eaten many creatures. That looks like a butt, like a lot of farts, a lot of gases. People were highly critical of both the screenshots and the allegation. People thought the screenshots could be fake because it just says deleted user, right? So it could be just anyone. Ivory went through a great deal of work trying to prove that screenshots are real. One of his friends showed it. Like Ivory ended up recording his phone, recording the conversation, etc., etc., and like they proved it. They essentially proved it. But like it's so interesting that people just didn't want to believe it. I think a lot of it has to do with the Slazo story coming out last year, like because everybody believed that right away, and Slazo's reputation was essentially destroyed for a short amount of time. But nobody questioned it. So now it's like the opposite has happened, where people hyper question it and give the accuser absolutely no benefit of the doubt. It's like, whoa, why can't it be balanced? You know what I mean? So anyways, nobody wanted to believe it. Now, one of the people that was actually very critical of the allegation, though, turned out to be none other than Pyrocynical's girlfriend. So Pyrocynical's current girlfriend messages Ivory, and she says, sorry to pop in like this, but why do you tweet shit like that about Niall? Pyrocynical's name is Niall, by the way. Like, what do you gain from it? Can't you talk to him directly instead of trying to ruin his career? I remember when this was happening personally, and it sounded to me like you had a crush on him and asked if he would ever be with a guy, and he just said, I don't know. Fiction is different than IRL. I gotta understand why you feel the need to do this. Not cool. And then he says, I know you're probably upset about it, but I know a lot of people who had the same shit happen as me. So that seems to be one of the reasons this guy came out, because, he's not the only person that he was talked to in this way. I put it out there like that because I know if I can talk about it and bite the bullet, it'd be better for them. And honestly, I don't care about that group because that shit was allowed to happen, and it's disgusting to me in hindsight. No matter how horny I was. I have nothing to gain from speaking to him except for a half-assed apology, but posting the shit publicly will validate other people's experiences and hopefully stop the shit from happening again. So honestly, I don't care. So okay, you see part of his goal is he does not want it to happen to anybody else, okay? Because he, according to him, he knows that it's happened to other people. And Pyro's girlfriend proceeds on to say, like, I remember you specifically sent fat art to him and furry shit, back and forth and saying it being mutual. I remember it from calls and DMs. You can't call it grooming when you were the one flirting with him and seeing if he would bite. I don't understand. She is making this look a lot worse for Pyro. Well, this is getting weird, right? Let's keep going. So then he says, how wasn't it grooming when he was the one sending me shit first and I played along? And she says, if you feel the need to talk about it, why not go to Niall himself and be like, hey, can we talk about it? Played along. You told me personally that you liked it. So I'm getting the perception that she was friends with him at the time, or at least, acquainted. Ivory says, I don't even know what I would say, and I don't get what would even be worth talking about. And then she says, then why is it worth trying to cancel him for a crush you had on him, and you were too shy to say no when you guys talked about fetishes? I just feel it's very unnecessary to post stuff like this when you know the guy. Like, you're not 14 anymore. Bro, what is she doing? First of all, he was 15. But she's making it worse by lowering the age, bro. What? There's a lot of implications here that, like, she knew his age. Ivory says, I get that. I think it was worth it because it was not just me being sent to shit. It was a bunch of other people who I know I'm speaking for on this. Then Pyro's girlfriend says, okay, like who? I think people are twisting it, saying it's grooming when they had a starstruck moment with him and didn't want to say, no, I don't like that stuff. And then it kept going. Don't do this shit because you're being pressured by other people, man. That's interesting. She's like, so who else, huh? If there's other people, who are they? Because she obviously doesn't believe that other people are being a victim of grooming, which, I mean, as far as I could see from those screenshots we saw earlier, to be honest, I didn't see any sign of grooming. I don't believe Ivory knows what grooming is because that wasn't it. You could 100% argue that it was completely inappropriate for Pyrocynical to be doing to a 15-year-old, talking to him like that. That's 100% inappropriate. But I don't think that's grooming. I personally am like cringing and like side-eyeing that buzzword. I feel like partially it's the fault of Twitter, because Twitter has become very like trigger friendly. Like, oh yes, let's do it on the buzzword grooming, gaslighting, you know, all this kind of stuff. They just like to use these words. And it's like, you don't have to hyper sensationalize your own story. If something caused you pain or trauma or any sort of inappropriateness happened in your life, you don't have to over dramatize it. You really don't, you know? So I think that's a big point against Ivory. Like, why grooming? It's a very weak point. So Ivory says, Assault is the same age as me, and Niall hit on him when he was 15 too. So Assault is another person that he's naming. She says, I have a hard time believing Niall slid in their DMs asking if they jerk off to that shit. And like I said, it's a snowball situation. Girl, your boyfriend jerks off to weird stuff. What more do you want to hear? I'm sorry, it's like a weird wake-up call. And then Ivory says, honestly, just like, why is a million subscriber YouTuber discussing fetishes with children? How does he not know what he's doing when he took the time to delete every message out of our DMs on his old account? Though he, for some reason, left the DMs from 2016 when I was 15. I guess Pyrocynical, before he deleted his account, he deleted a bunch of fetish messages that he had on Discord with this person. And I mean, that is a good question, but that is not grooming. You know, like, just because a million subscriber YouTuber messages teenagers about vor fetishes, that is not grooming, but it is extremely inappropriate. Extremely inappropriate. And none of Pyro's fans have answered that question. But I'm waiting. I'll be waiting. She says, besides, didn't Assault go around asking for feet pictures? Okay. So tell that 15-year-old to go away or stop communicating with the 15-year-old in the first place. Why are you 19, 20 years old talking to a 15-year-old that's asking you for feet pictures? I don't understand why she keeps doing these questions. This woman needs to like a reality check. How does she think this is a good way to respond to anything that he's saying? She is so like, yeah, and I'm okay, dumb. I'm gonna say that, but that's not going in the video. She's dumb. And he says, like, it's really fucking obvious his intentions. And she says, yo, he was like, what, 18, 19 when that happened? Age difference wasn't that bad. And I know you were talking about how you effed in your mom's living room and such with both him and me. Like, you were clearly mature enough to say, nah, man, I'm not into this stuff. Wait, so she's saying that she had a conversation with this kid when he was 15 and she was on a phone call with him and Pyro, and he's talking about having sexual relations with other people in his mom's living room. Clearly you were mature enough to know what you were talking about to say no if you're having sex with other people in your mom's living room at 15 years old. Is this what we're all hearing here? Is this what we're all hearing here? Here's the thing. He never argued that he's not into the divorce stuff. Very obviously he was into it, you know? He's not saying he regrets it. He's just saying that he felt manipulated. That's what he should have said, but he said groomed. But yeah, he obviously felt used for like sexual needs, but I think he was into it, obviously, but he's 15. It doesn't matter whether he was into it or not. Pyrocynical should have said no because he's a 19-year-old pursuing a 15-year-old for fantasy roleplay. And this woman was around as well. Why is this happening? So earlier Ivory had said it's really obvious his intentions. And then she says, no, it really isn't obvious at all, Ivory. There's no ill intent in what happened, and you know that. And then she says, you talked to me about it though, how you were super excited every time you talked, LOL. Bro, so she's corroborating that he was excited to talk to this 1.5 million subscriber YouTube. At the time, I checked Wayback Machine. And I mean, you watch a little bit of Pyro's content. That's obviously like teenager, you know, even today. Like, so a few years back, yeah, his demographic is teenagers, okay? So yeah, a teenage fan is gonna be excited to talk to his favorite YouTuber. What? She's only building a case for him. I can't believe this. Okay. Okay. So Ivory says, but that doesn't justify it. And she says, what? Justify what? That you guys sent stuff back and forth? Sis, you're not understanding. One of them is 15, the other one is 19. Just because you think the age difference isn't that big doesn't mean that it's not inappropriate.
I was having relationships with a girl, and then I found out she knew who I was.
Yeah, I feel like anything in fan territory gets a bit...
And then Ivory says, I shouldn't have been put in that situation as a child. And then she says, you're not innocent here either. You sent me stuff as well. I don't know why this needs to be said, but in case, I mean, I do have like, you know, a lot of people in here. So if you're an adult, if you're over the age of 18, and you're conversing with a minor, anyone that's under the age of 18, okay? I don't care if the age of consent is 17, 16, 15, 13, or whatever with the other person you're talking to. I don't care. If you're talking to them and they start sending you weird feet pictures or they ask you for stuff that's like sexual in nature, block that shit immediately. Why would you say you're not innocent? You sent me that stuff. Why does this need to be said out loud? All right, so let's continue here. So then Ivory says he shouldn't have been role-playing with a freaking 15 or 16-year-old. And she says, I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. You kept feeding into it as well. How do you say that it didn't happen, but you also say you fed into it? You kind of acknowledge that it happened earlier. This girl is confusing. And she's also saying you also slept with older men at that time. I remember you told me that. Oh my God, this girl is just, what is she doing? How is she really saying this out loud? Like, so because a 15-year-old slept with older men, suddenly it's okay that a 19-year-old talked to him sexually? What does this mean? She says, you can be angry all you want, but don't say he's grooming you and acting like he ruined your life when you were feeding into it yourself. Again, I agree that the grooming word usage was incorrect. I wish that Ivory would at least retract it, set the record fucking straight. I apologize for using the word groom. I didn't know what the fuck I was saying. I don't know that he was acting like his life was ruined either though. He really should not have said he was groomed. But everything she's saying, she should really just zip it. This is crazy. Then he says, I sent you weird NSFW stuff as a child because it was tolerated and I wanted to off myself every waking moment because I know that I'll always be tainted by stuff like that in my head. I'm not perfect, and I was literally jailbait because of how people abused the S out of me, not knowing boundaries when I was younger. She says, that sucks, yeah, but you can't take that out on Niall. You've had bad experiences as a young teen, but it's not Niall alone. Why don't you talk to a therapist? Not Niall alone, but he's one of them. And that's kind of an awkward way to say it, sis. Why don't you talk to a therapist or something about what you've gone instead of going to Twitter? So that was the end of that conversation. Oh my God, guys, I have to pee. He says, I am not denying that in the past, I took part in conversations with others that many of you will understandably consider to be weird and distasteful, probably an understatement. It was careless of me not to consider who was behind the roleplay/art sharing, and I take full accountability. But these exchanges never amounted to anything other than fantasy roleplay. I have never sent or solicited nude or IRL content. I've never tried to engineer an illicit encounter or lure anybody into anything. Yeah, he's definitely looking up the definition of grooming here. I have never built a dialogue, connection, or relationship with the intention of manipulating or exploiting anyone. This was even confirmed by Ivory himself in an interview.
Here's what I'm not understanding. And how were you groomed? Because you don't need to be groomed for this to be wrong. Let me tell you something right now. If this conversation itself, assuming it took place, and it's looking like it did, is completely inappropriate for an adult to have with a child. But the grooming thing, that brings it to a whole new level. I mean, now we're talking about people that are, not just having a dirty conversation with an underage person, but plan to do something about it.
See, I'm not like, I don't know.
Did somebody tell you to use the word grooming?
I was in a call with my friend when I typed it out, and I typed I remember I typed that and asked is that okay? Because they know about this, and that was I got a yes for that. So
yes. Because it reads more like a YouTube thumbnail. Do you honestly believe? And just be honest. Did you not understand the definition of the word completely?
I feel like it was forcing or manipulating a child into a sexual situation.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
that's what that word means to me.
Sure.
I'm
This is the unfortunate part about the whole grooming word, right? Because now the grooming allegation is overshadowing the actual inappropriate stuff that went on. And look, even he admitted that I technically didn't groom him. When you're making such a big claim, people are gonna grill you, especially if you're going after a YouTuber with 4.4 million subscribers. He's got 4.4 million subscribers. So of course people are gonna grill you, And even if he didn't have that many people, you can expect to be grilled. Of course. Say you're going after someone at a workplace. His family might want to grill you too. Of course. It makes sense, because at the end of the day, even though the story makes a lot of sense to you, and even on paper it could make it a lot of sense, he still might have loved ones that won't be happy about it. So it has to be very concretely written and done really well, because it's a huge claim. I mean, imagine someone doing it about your friend. Immediately you would want to be like, hey, wait, that's my friend. What are you saying? Hold on. Let's make sure this is written right. Well, you want to find holes because you care about this person. So it's normal, And the fact that he said grooming and didn't even know how to define it that was kind of a flaw on Ivory's end. He went on to say, he never at any point stated that he felt uncomfortable, and if he did, I never would have continued to message him and respond to him. Every exchange between Ivory and I was fully consensual and reciprocal. The interesting part is that that is actually a factor of grooming, because when you're groomed, they don't respond in the way that a typical person might respond, right? You're essentially being trained to react a certain way. So someone that is being groomed, they're not gonna say no, okay? They're not gonna say I feel uncomfortable, okay? So that doesn't make sense. That doesn't really work in his favor. But I still don't think it was grooming. In my opinion, this all looks like it's like a 15-year-old kid. I was a 15-year-old guy one time. Yeah, I was horny, whatever. If I had a vor fetish, maybe I would talk to an older dude about it. I don't know. But at the end of the day, like that's not on a 15-year-old, you know? Pyro, you're literally saying, when I was 19 years old and I was talking to this 15-year-old boy, he never said he felt uncomfortable by my sexual advances and fantasy role play. So it was fully consensual. Me and the 15-year-old were kicking it off. Bro, what the what? Am I missing something? Oh wait, it gets better. He goes on to say, he never once disclosed the fact that he was 15 at the time these exchanges commenced. Imagine, I'm sorry, maybe there is people that do this, but imagine having a relationship with someone. I'm not saying like, you know, like a boyfriend, girlfriend type of thing or whatever. I'm just saying like a relationship, you know, friendship, whatever. So imagine having a friendship with someone that you happen to talk in fantasy roleplay, vor fetish stuff, right? From 2017 or 2016 rather, up until this year, and you don't know their age. You're gonna play ignorant like that, really? That doesn't make any sense. Why? And especially if you talk to them in the nature that is sexual, why are you ignoring that? Let's keep going. He never once disclosed the fact that he was 15 at the time these exchanges commenced. He didn't include his age in his bio until he was 16, but I was not on Twitter between 28th December 2016 until 29th June 2017 as I was suspended. Okay, there are a lot of tweets of him tweeting that he was like 15 and stuff, but they were after Pyro was banned. So, you know, the dude was pretty open about his age. I don't know if all of a sudden once Pyro was gone, he stopped being open about his age. I don't know. Somebody tweeted all these examples about it. I don't know why he would hide it if that was actually an intentional thing. There was another screenshot, another example where he did say it. Tommy C, who did the interview with Ivory, posted a screenshot of Ivory going through his phone, and one of the frames shows Ivory saying, "Not only am I a minor," so he's like acknowledging at some point, right? So he's not acknowledging that he's a minor. Now, of course, a minor means under 18. I guess technically Pyro could have seen that and been like, "Oh yeah, you're a minor, but you're not underage. You're just a minor. You're just under 18." I guess. So there's at least one example of Ivory acknowledging to Pyro that he was a minor. So, however you want to take that, age of consent in England is 16. So, but there is at least one example of Ivory saying that he's a minor. It's just like, it's pretty obvious to me what's going on, that like Pyro's very obviously using like the talking points that his fans have used. Like, it's very obvious to me. Pyro says, moreover, individuals have since come forward contending that Ivory would be disingenuous about his age to proactively gain entry to other fantasy roleplay groups. So he's saying that Ivory lied about his age to get into fantasy roleplay groups. Not only is this irrelevant because he didn't lie to Pyro at all. Like, Pyro has never accused him of lying. So he's trying to like confuse people and assassinate Ivory's character so people don't trust him and trust his claims. Not that it matters, because at the end of the day, Pyro did, like, all Pyro's doing is trying to distract you, okay? This feels like an interesting like court hearing. But at the end of the day, Pyro corroborated that he spoke to this 15-year-old inappropriately when he was 19. Okay, that's it. Like, there's no need to assassinate this Ivory person's character, but he's doing it. All right, so it's kind of interesting. Now, the example that Pyro listed was a tweet from this guy who I'm really sketched out about his credibility. I looked into him, and he seems extremely biased. He posted a weird excerpt of a conversation, and the first screenshot is from this person who is unidentified. So we'll just consider him random number one. But he said that Ivory was part of their really spicy roleplay. Popular people on YouTube all know Pyro's fetishes. But people like this guy didn't, and pressured Ivory to complain about them grooming him. So apparently this guy might have made Ivory use the grooming word. So that bit Ivory in the ass. So if this guy's at fault, oof. You should ask that to people who spoke and speak to him. He told me and others at some point that he was over the age of 18, but I don't have video proof, that's for sure. If I recorded all of my conversations like that, I would need a petabyte size drive. Okay, so this random person makes a claim. I guess we should believe this one random person, right? At least this person has an @reply. They say, I was around back then, and he would always claim to be 18 years of age. You can't reverse your age years later and then claim that an unsuspecting Pyrocynical is all of a sudden predatory just because he lied back then. Now, again, there's no examples of Ivory lying at all. So everyone's just saying he lied about his age, but not even Pyro is accusing him of lying about his age. So this is just convoluting the whole story. This is why this was such a confusing story to begin with before Pyro responded. So thankfully, Pyro made it more clear. Now, I want to show you guys the next exhibit. Well, you look at that. He went ahead and apologized to Ivory. He said, just to clear this part, I have to admit fault on my part. I spoke to a few people about it, and it seems we have all had the Mandela effect. I skimmed through the interview, and I think the I'm Alex Twitter video from back in the day was what caused this. So I guess I have to apologize for that one. Let me know if you want the tweets deleting or to stay up as an archive. I understand how you could have gotten confused, and I accept your apology. I owe you one for sending that shit in the first place. So I guess he's apologizing for lying about the age, and he's saying I can delete the tweets. So Pyro is citing a random person that has no username and a person that has already said, oh shit, never mind. It was like a Mandela effect. We all thought you were over 18. You guys said that at some point. Never mind. So that's awkward, bro. Pyro goes on to say, I am really confused by Ivory's inconsistency. There is evidence to suggest that he engaged in fantasy roleplay with another individual similar age to me. This individual was also not aware of Ivory's age at the time, but in this particular example, it was Ivory who very much initiated and directed the roleplay. So here we see Ivory saying, hee hee, oh yeah, do you remember when we'd nut in call? Hee hee, goodness, those were the days. And the guy says, yeah, though it took me a lot of times to say no at first, haha. And then Ivory says, but you seem to enjoy it. And the guy says, well, I mean, who doesn't enjoy the nut? And Ivory says, true. Honestly, I thought of ya when we'd do that. Ooh woo. And then the guy says, well, I thought of my bunny too. Your haunter was there too, strapped in them tentacles. And then somebody asked that person and says, oh wait, no, Chef is Pyrocynical actually. So Pyrocynical asked the guy, says, what do you mean when you said, took me a lot of time to say no at first? Like, was he pressuring initially? And the guy says, yeah. So this guy's like, yeah, this 15-year-old was pressuring me. And then I guess he was sent this screenshot. And in the screenshot, you see Ivory saying, what do you think you're going to do down there? The older guy says, nothing, just on a quest to buy a bottle of water. Town is very far away, like 2 hours of walking, but I am going to hop there fast. Oop, cute bunny. Are you going to get one of those big old water bottles you got yesterday? Ooh, woo. So this is part of the fantasy roleplay, by the way. And the guy says, nah, I got them here still. I'm just going to give my journey a purpose. My little journey. The little bunny's adventure, hee hee. Say, would you maybe want to roleplay a bit before you go? Ooh, woo. Wait, that wasn't roleplaying? Never mind. Was that? Anyways. So then the guy says, MB. I don't know what that means. Then Ivory says, oop. MB apparently means maybe. I'm such a boomer. So Ivory says, oop. And the guy says, though I'm watching the show in a bit now. And he says, yes. After that, if you want to. Ooh, woo. Sorry if I'm bothering you at all. I don't know what that's supposed to prove. Other than you're outing your weird friend, dude. Why are you friends with another guy that's... Why? And here's the thing. I know there are a lot of people saying, well, hey, wait, well, Pyrocynical proved that Ivory is sketch. Yeah, he was a sketch 15-year-old doing weird fantasy roleplay with older guys. Yet everyone's being like, yeah, he's sketch. Is it not sketch that the adults were roleplaying with the kid? And not asking for his age? Because there's no proof that Ivory even lied to this adult either. He's not even saying that here. So he's confusing you with details. He's saying that, look, he lied to these other people and he talked to this adult as well, but he didn't lie to that adult. That adult just didn't bother to ask. In fact, here he talks about that same adult. Watch. After Ivory alleged that I groomed him, this individual then reached out to him to apologize for any hurt he may have inadvertently caused him. To which Ivory responded with, no, you're fine, I don't care. Okay? So again, this is the adult that we just saw fantasy role-playing with Ivory. Okay, so this same guy that we just saw earlier says, hey, we had a whole talk about what we did years ago. For me, it was nothing more than furry role-playing with a total stranger. But for you, I didn't know it could affect you for this much. I thought you moved on after we had our talk again last year. So I'm sorry if it affected you this way. Do you want to talk about it? And Ivory says, no, you're fine, I don't care. And then the guy says, I know I am, but you don't seem to be. If you're really hurt by what happened, I'm here for you, man. And that's where it cuts off, right? So then Pyro says, why does he not care in this instance? Why does he remain unaffected by similar interaction with others, yet feel the need to single me out and character assassinate only me on social media? Let's have a look at Ivory's response on Twitter. He says, all I'm saying to Niall's response, again, that's Pyro, is that the I don't care DM was taken out of context, and I said that I needed space afterwards. I didn't want to hear from this person, so I said whatever I could to get him out of my DMs. Also, the person who said I lied about my age apologized. I already showed you guys that DM. So let's have a look at that screenshot in better resolution here. This is the same conversation once again, the guy apologizing, and then Ivory says, no, you're fine, I don't care. And then he says, if you're really hurt by what happened, I'm here for you, man. And he says, I just need space right now, I think. Now, why would Pyro crop that part out? Or was it the person that cropped it out and sent it to Pyro? Because here's the thing. People take it at face value, someone saying, I don't care, right? Oh, I don't care. No, I don't care. No. But have you never in your life said, I don't care, whatever. No, okay, like when you try to get something that you don't want to talk about, if you don't feel uncomfortable. Like, to me, it's quite apparent that Ivory's processing all this shit and he's just not dealing with it right now. Because this is literally the day that Pyro came out with his allegation, right? So he's obviously getting a lot of scrutiny on this specific day. So he was not trying to deal with it right now. It makes sense to me. I don't think he literally meant I don't care. So I guess this person must have been convinced that Ivory didn't care. So he sent this screenshots to Pyro. I don't know if this guy cropped it. I don't know if Pyro cropped it. But either way, I don't like that the part right after is just cropped out. It seems very dishonest. Like, why? It's ironic to me that Pyrocynical is saying, why is my character being assassinated by him? Only me, huh? So he's doing the same thing right back to Ivory. He's doing it full force, you know? And he's literally posting a screenshot out of context, cropped out. And he also quoted somebody that has already admitted to have made an oopsie and said that, oh, never mind, you didn't lie about your age. So these are already two flaws in Pyro's defense here. You know, Pyro could have left it simple and just said, yo, I should have asked for people's age when I was talking to them very inappropriately. Of course, I wouldn't have turned out so pretty. So, of course, you got to put all the shame and all the attention on the fact that he made a bad grooming word choice. He definitely did not groom anybody, okay? But he still is taking away all the attention of the fact that he was speaking inappropriately to a teenager. So here is the interesting part. Pyro goes on to show that up until September of this year, Ivory and him have been talking. They're still exchanging pictures. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of them doing the fetish stuff, just drawing some weird inflation. However, what this does show us, guys, to be fair, this does show us that there must have been some sort of falling out. I am curious as to why Ivory decided all of a sudden. I have to remain completely objective here because Ivory has said that there are other people. Okay, so did he recently learn that other people were subjected to Pyro's inappropriate fetish roleplay? Because if so, it looks kind of bad that he's been talking to him up until September. Is that when he found out? If so, that would help him in his case. And it would also help him if those people spoke up. Otherwise, Ivory's looking real lonesome. However, this also works against Pyro as much as it works against Ivory because it shows that they literally spoke for the period of around 3 years. So you're telling me that you spoke to this person for 3 years and you didn't know their age. Well, first of all, that's bullshit because your girlfriend showed that she also apparently knew Ivory for that long and she knew his age. So that kind of sketchy, bro. It sounds like you're lying, but you know, fuck it. Either way, let's assume that you did know their age. How do you not know the age of someone you've been talking to for 3 years? How? Especially someone you partake in a fetish roleplay, bro. What? How is this real? And here's the thing. Say he found out the age maybe a year later. Why wasn't this ever addressed? Why wasn't he ever like, whoa, I'm sorry that we're talking like that before, by the way? Or why didn't he cut that person off? It would be more redeemable if once you found out that, holy shit, wait, you mean you were 15? Like a year ago? Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to ask. I'm sorry. I screwed up. I gotta block you. Or something, or remedy, or talk about that. Why is that not a conversation? Am I missing something? How do you remain friends with someone that you literally talked to when they were a freaking minor, dude? In this, what? Come on. Even the biggest Pyrocynical fan can't fucking fight that, right? Come on, man. What? During the interview mentioned earlier, he was confronted with evidence that he sent kink art to someone else. He initially claims it was him, but then backtracks, claiming he has no recollection. Okay, let's watch that.
So, what's the deal with this?
That is shit I sent.
You did send that to her?
Oh no. I honestly have no recollection of it, and I don't even specifically know who Reddit Moments is.
So you're
like,
saying you have no idea who this person is? Let's see how new their account is. April 2017. Their account. So you don't saying you know who they are. Okay, and this looks very similar.
Like, I don't.
This looks very similar.
I probably know.
Yeah, you're not saying you don't know them, but off the top of your head, let's be clear.
Yeah, off the top of my head.
So is he mistaken?
But I know that, like,
was he mistaken? Or are you telling people you're 18? Back in 2017.
Yeah, he was. Oh, I was not saying I was 18. I've never lied about my age on, like, never lied about my age because that's.
So he says he's never lied about his age. Let me go to Reddit Moments, the Twitter account right now. Let's see what they've said recently. Nothing? What you don't tweet anything? You don't tweet any fucking update, bro? I wish this person made it like a public tweet clearing the record. So once again, Reddit Moments is the same person that apologized to Ivory. Ivory's response is very limited. All he has said in response to Pyrocynical is that person apologized. There's no public statement on the Reddit Moments Twitter. So what's the deal? Wait, but they deleted that tweet, didn't they? They deleted that tweet, I just realized. So Pyro is once again citing the person that apologized to Ivory because they insist that, whoops, never mind, you didn't lie about your age, I was wrong. And this tweet that you guys see on screen that Pyro is citing is now been deleted by Reddit Moments. So maybe that's why Pyro's not citing the actual tweet, because it doesn't exist anymore. I think that's enough detective. I don't think we have to tweet him because he deleted the tweet. So I think he switched sides, I guess. I don't know. Pyro says, I'm not here to personally attack anyone. I just want to clear my name. Being falsely accused has been extremely stressful, and it is such a serious issue. I feel it has to now be addressed. All this being said, I will kindly ask my fans to not call out Ivory nor direct any negativity his way. I don't want to play any part in fueling or perpetuating hate. I just want to share the truth, close this chapter, move forward, and return to doing what I love, making unfunny videos. Now, obviously, Pyro's response was very well crafted in that he put a lot of accusations towards Ivory, most of them unproven, like the whole he lies about his age but he doesn't, there's nothing solidifying, so he's making his own false accusations. But at the end of the day, he still talked to a minor inappropriately, and his girlfriend victim shamed the hell out of him. It's crazy. But here's the thing, Ivory screwed up royally by saying he got groomed. He could have just said that he was taken advantage of by a popular YouTuber, because there is that's what he says in the beginning. You guys got to remember, Ivory in his initial tweet, Ivory said that he would do things for Pyro because it's freaking Pyro, and he was happy to be talking to Pyro. And Pyro's own girlfriend corroborated that claim by saying, you told me yourself that you were happy to be talking to Pyro. He was a fan of Pyro. He was a 15-year-old fan of this 19-year-old YouTuber. So of course, I just think it's weird that they're overshadowing all the inappropriate conversations with the fact that he mislabeled what happened with grooming. Yeah, I think he mislabeled it, to be honest. I think that's where Ivory messed up. And that's the big issue with people that try to come out about allegations. They always will screw up. And once people that will defend the other party get on that screw up, oh man, they will capitalize the fuck out of that, dude. It's insane. It's good he's addressing this. I myself believe Pyro's a good man and he would never do anything of what Ivory accused him of. I mean, I guess, yeah, he didn't groom anybody, but he definitely fantasy roleplay with some 15-year-old kids. I'm glad you're happy with that. See, it's being overlooked. It's classic. All right, I think we're done though. But yeah, it's classic, addressing the allegations without addressing the hard-hitting stuff, which, makes sense. At the end of the day, Pyrocynical remains untouched. You look at his social blade, he's lost nothing. This is not even getting to his demographic. Most of his demographic doesn't even care about this. I don't really see what kind of clout Ivory gained. But yeah, I'm curious to see if anybody stands on another side. Did we forget about the prolapsed butthole? Seriously, how did we forget about the... Yo, so you're telling me that if I draw a prolapsed butthole and I send it to a 15-year-old, it's okay as long as I never ask for the age before sending that? Are you guys okay? Are you guys okay? Don't ask, just don't ask and you're good. Oh, he didn't know the age, guys. Oh, okay, that's fine then. You know the drama's good when you forget about the prolapse asshole. God, no. See, that's the thing though. Like Pyro did so much distracting. Like Pyro's just freaking distracting everywhere. Look over there. Look up. Someone said this about Ivory. Someone said this something else about Ivory. He didn't draw. He commissioned it. What? That's even worse. He commissioned a prolapse asshole and gave it to fans. Are you kidding me, Punky? No, don't tell me this. That's worse. I think that's worse. To be honest, I think that's way worse. I'm gonna go pee. Hold on. Oh. So obviously right now I don't have anybody opposing what I'm thinking. So, but I did have somebody reply to one of my tweets that I made about the situation. So let me put it on the screen. I said to Tommy C, I don't like that Pyro tried to prove inconsistency from Ivory when he showed a screenshot of another older person apologizing to Ivory, and Ivory's shown saying, I don't care. Why crop out the part where Ivory also said he wanted space? And why not apologize? I'm confused why Pyro doesn't care to apologize or really acknowledge the fact that he was inappropriate with an underage person. In my opinion, like, that is power abuse, you know? And I guess people don't care about power abuse, but I think it's a huge deal if a 1.5 million subscriber YouTube talks to one of their fans and starts talking about fetishes and doesn't even bother to ask for their age. That's extremely dangerous. And like, if people want to disagree, then we'll just have to fucking butt heads. But yeah, so I said that. And I quoted the tweet. Thoughts on the undisputed assertion that that this individual had at least one conversation regarding what occurred with Ivory a year ago, and the matters was considered complete. Wait, what is this? What? On an undisputed assertion that this individual had at least one conversation regarding what happened with Ivory a year ago. Okay, yeah, he's talking about the other person. What is the rationale behind blacking out this person's name as opposed to calling him/her out too? So basically, because in my tweet, Ivory obviously censors this other person's name, right? So he's asking me why did Ivory censor that person's name? And I said, well, for one, the individual reached out to Ivory to apologize, something Pyro never cared to do. I assume there's also no major power dynamic, which was the major point behind Ivory coming out about Pyro. Perhaps Ivory didn't feel taken advantage of in the same ways. Not only that, the two main points that Ivory stated for coming out was that he knew that Pyro spoke to other young people in the same way, and of course, he was flattered because it was Pyro. Now, I'm only assuming that Ivory blurred out this person's name because this person, you know, isn't a public figure or doesn't have a history of doing it to other people. So what's the point of like warning others, right? At least that Ivory knows of, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that maybe Ivory believes that for this person, it's an honest mistake and that's why he's apologizing, you know, and he's not a famous person. But for Pyro, he's a famous person, doesn't even care to apologize. And then instead of like reaching out to Ivory personally, he, you know, shames the fuck out of Ivory. Look, at the end of the day, as far as accusations go, we need to remain objective. There is definitely no sign of grooming that I can see. I'm sorry, there just isn't. There is definitely a power abuse, power dynamic, and like he's abusing his e-fame to exploit his fetish with a 15-year-old fan. That is incorrect, okay? That is what Pyro wants you to forget, because he's saying, look at Ivory doing this and this and this and this and this and this. But what about what he did? What about Pyro messaging 15-year-olds without even bothering to ask for their age? Even if Ivory did lie about his age to other people, which has not been proven, he didn't lie to Pyro about it. That was never even a claim. Why should it be on the responsibility of a 15-year-old to tell a 19-year-old what their age is if they're gonna engage in inappropriate conduct at all? How does that make sense to anybody? You're telling me that you're a grown-ass adult, a 19-year-old dude, and you're gonna talk to a 15-year-old dude and it's their job to tell you their age? Are you serious? Whatever happened to ASL? There is a plus side that this is a very strange, you know, fetish stuff. So, you know, there isn't any actual exchanges, okay? There's no like pictures or anything, so that's good. That's good. It's not the worst accusation. It's not gonna ruin Pyrocynical's career at all. I'm pretty sure it hasn't done anything to him. Okay. Hopefully he has stopped. Like, hopefully it is actually a few times occurrence, or maybe only one. Hopefully only one. But if it happened a couple other times, hopefully that's where it ended. Okay. Hopefully he's not like a perpetual seeker of people. I just think we can't forget his girlfriend's behavior was very strange and wrong, and I hope she gets a wake-up call too, because that was completely inappropriate. I don't know, we'll see. So after I did my stream, Ivory posted a thread on Twitter, and I'm going to read it to you guys because I think it's a good way to wrap this whole thing up and balance it all out. This situation is a perfect representation of why victims don't come out about their experiences. I have ample proof, and all of my friends who knew Pyro know what happened. I don't need to prove this shit to random strangers. Right off the bat, I can't help but refute this and say this is not a perfect representation of why victims don't come out about their stories. The way Pyro spoke to you was not okay, but you never even tried to prove the whole grooming accusation to anybody as far as I saw. There were plenty of tweets trying to prove the conversations were real, and I believe you on that, and I think everybody does. But nothing really trying to back up your claim that he groomed you. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that you made a mistake. I feel like that would have made you come out stronger because, Pyro himself made some mistakes in his own response towards you. Ivory continued, but my hope with talking about this on a public platform was that I could progress the conversation about weeding out exploitation of minors because it's a thing that runs rampant in all online communities, and it has potential to ruin people's lives before they even start. Now, while this does back up how he had said earlier that he knew of at least one other person that Pyro was talking to inappropriately, I don't like that part of this kind of makes him seem like a martyr, which was the kind of sentiment that I got in his original tweet. All right, let's keep going. On top of that, it's also a matter of alerting potential victims to past predatory behavior. I'm confirmed correct when saying that Pyro sent NSFW to a child, and you'd be blind to disregard his majority child fanbase being extremely easy prey for him if he decided to repeat that. Now you see right here he's being clever because he's capitalizing on the truth of his accusation. The fact that Pyro did send a lot of disgusting stuff and roleplayed with a minor. That is weird and inappropriate. But how come we don't see anything about the grooming part, right? I wish that Ivory had acknowledged that, he used the wrong language, maybe deleted the tweet, apologized for it, and redid it all over again. I don't know. But I am curious if there's an example of Pyro doing this kind of behavior recently, or what exactly led Ivory to come out, especially knowing that he was in contact with Pyro as recent as September of this year. This shit goes so much deeper than me clout chasing, and I struggle to see how people can't grasp this. The environment that's been made and upheld is more inclined to defend predators than the children that they prey on, and the choice of who to protect is strictly enforced. Examples that come to mind are me being apologized to for being roleplayed with by an adult, and then having my reply taken out of context and used against me in Al's response. Right here, he once again attaches that screenshot we went over earlier. Now, right here, I am a little bit confused as to why he censors this person's name, considering he's saying that he's offended that that person's turned around and sent a screenshot of that to Pyro, and this was a screenshot of Niall using it against him. Then he says, me being gaslit by Niall's girlfriend and her mentioning incriminating shit to get me to back down on speaking out. And the last screenshot was of the conversation that he had with Pyro's girlfriend, who, yes, I think all these points are actually good. This is all weird that the person that also roleplayed with the minor decided to send it to Pyro. That's weird. And also his girlfriend, all that was really bizarre. All of the people from those circles telling me I could deal with it privately, which would make it insanely easy to sweep under the rug, along with people telling me I was egging it on, when the entire point is that no matter how I was responding, Niall was talking to a child. It's all part of a social dynamic that allows influential people in online communities to prey on their friend groups and or audience with as little consequence as possible, and it's reinforced via people doing the same starstruck clout chasing shit I'm being accused of doing. So he started out rough, but he does end with a good point. This is what I was saying was his biggest point. The fact that it was a huge power abuse on Pyro's part and extremely inappropriate. I just wish he would have stuck with this in the first place. Why is there no mention of grooming in this entire thing? Part of me is like, dude, you can't get too mad. You have to understand why people are, where they're coming from. You can't just be like, yo, this is why people don't believe survivors of grooming or what? You know what I mean? It's like, I wish he had clarified that. But other than that, I don't think that Pyro is going to suffer. I still don't think that. However, I do think that there is hopefully some sort of stain to his reputation, and I hope that he has stopped. I don't know when the last time he roleplayed with an underage person was, or if it was actually a lot of people. Hopefully this is a wake-up call. I guess we'll see. I don't know. What do you think, Keemstar?
You know what? Pyro really isn't that bad. Except for he's a furry that goes to furry conventions that gets fucked in the ass by 40-year-old men in fucking giraffe costumes.
Thank you for checking out this recap from my live stream. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and it'll let me know that you guys are interested in this and want me to keep doing this, because this is actually part of a 4-hour-long live stream, so I might have some more to put up. Subscribe with notifications so you don't miss the next live stream, or check out my Patreon and watch them the next day.